We're back on North Dakota Today. The time is 9:16. Of course, from time to time, everybody needs a little help, a little outside perspective on things when you're dealing with the situation, maybe as an individual or maybe as a couple.
So the real question is, when is it time to see a counselor? You know, when you stop struggling with it by yourself. How do you know when you've reached that tipping point? Now, Annette Link is a marriage counselor in Bismarck, and she's here to help us kind of sort that out. Welcome to the show, Annette.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you know, we all have our little disagreements and things with, let's start with couples. We have our disagreements, our little spats and, you know, things that we, you know, kind of get after each other on. But when do you know, yeah, he's laughing over here.
I'm not going to say a word.
Yeah. But when do you know that it's time to consult somebody from the outside, maybe need a different perspective?
Sure. Well, a lot of times people can resolve and work through many of their own issues by themselves. There are times that it is a good idea to take a step back and say, are we just spinning our wheels here and going around and around and not getting anywhere? I think when a person sits back and says, you know, for the sake of not having an argument, I'm just going to be quiet here and not say anything. And what can happen, they can push it in and push it in, and that has to manifest itself. It does manifest itself somehow, some way. And oftentimes they may start doing some things to just kind of cope with the fact that some of their issues in their marriage may not be getting resolved. They may not have the communication or the resolution or the problem-solving skills to take care of that.
So that may be one of the first signs, is you keep talking about it, but nothing ever seems to get resolved.
Right, and more emotion is coming into it, and more hard feelings, and one of the things that can happen from that is subsequently sometimes people take a step back and start talking to a coworker.
Oh,
in the workplace,
somebody else,
right, or an in-law, or their own parent or family, and pretty soon you've created a bit of a triangle, and it may deter you from talking to the person, talking to your spouse, and unfortunately, sometimes people say, I didn't realize that I was getting emotionally attached to another person as they're discussing their issues, their marital issues with someone else.
Let's address that point, because I've been told from time to time that, you know, well, that's what friends are for. I mean, you're supposed to talk things through with your friends. You don't have to go to a counselor. Just talk to a good friend.
You know, yeah, friends are for someone to listen to. I think a good friend, though, will also be able to look you in the eye and say, you know, what's your part in this? They're not just patting you on the back and say, oh, you poor thing. You know, you should just leave him.
Or helping you trash your spouse, you know,
right,
that's the thing. I mean, it's like, right, you should leave him. And also people become, if they decide not to talk about it, they can become passive aggressive, right? I mean, if they, like, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to start an argument, and yet it's there.
Yeah, it's an underlying thing. It's the elephant in the middle of the room, and unfortunately, resentment can start building. When I see couples, I tell them, you know, sometimes there's been a brick laid, and pretty soon this wall is so high that you can't see each other over the top of it anymore. And we have to look at, you know, where we put each brick, and that's where the resentment and it is tough. I try to encourage people not to get to the point where the wall is so high that you can't see each other anymore. You know, and like I was mentioning to Kevin, a lot of people have a hard time just even seeking out counseling because I know in my generation, I don't know if you guys remember the Bob Newhart show.
Oh, sure.
I think his name was Dr. Hartley.
Yeah.
And, you know, we say, well, that's the kind of people who go seek counseling. They really do have some real quirkiness, something wrong with them. And in actuality, it's a very good self-maintenance type of it's self-care, and it's good for a relationship.
Well, that's a great way to look at this too. I mean, you go to the doctor for preventative maintenance. You go to the dentist for checkups. Why not do this as sort of just to check and see if your head's okay, your head and your heart's okay?
Now, we'll talk more about this when we come back. We'll have more in just a bit.